Come get me. 2 words, 3 syllables. Sophia Caruso's voice, barely above a whisper on the other end of the line, cracked down the middle like something that had been holding too long under too much weight. I was at the Meridian Club when the call came through. Black tie event. 30 of the most powerful men in the city seated at long tables raising crystal glasses in my honor. The kind of evening that reminds every person in the room exactly where they stand in relation to everyone else. I had a speech prepared, hands to shake, a room full of alliances to maintain and obligations to honor. I walked out of all of it. Didn't explain, didn't apologize. Handed my glass to the man beside me, told him the evening was in his hands, and walked through the side door into the cold night air before anyone could ask a question. Stay on the line with me, I told Sophia. I'm already getting my keys. In my world, you do not show weakness. You do not let anyone see you bleed. You do not abandon a room full of your most important allies because a woman asked you to come get her from a wedding. I left anyway. And as my car moved through the late-night streets toward the Hargrove estate where her sister's celebration was still in full shine without her, I kept asking myself the same question I'd been asking since the first morning she appeared in my life. How did a pastry chef from Maplewood Street manage to do what no one in 43 years had done before? How did Sophia Caruso get inside? It started, as most things that end up mattering, with my mother. Rosa Marino was turning 60 in October. The woman had raised 3 children alone after my father was killed when I was 12 years old. She had built a life in a city that offers nothing for free, navigated grief with the kind of discipline that never asked for recognition, and devoted 40 years of quiet strength to making sure her children understood the difference between power and dignity. She deserved more than a party. She deserved a moment that would stop time. I went to 6 bakeries in the space of 2 weeks. Each one of them pulled out a catalog. Standard designs, standard flavors, preset packages with elegant photographs of cakes that looked like they'd been produced 1,000 times for 1,000 interchangeable occasions. They were technically beautiful, completely forgettable. Like expensive wallpaper, visually correct and emotionally empty. Someone in my circle gave me a name. Told me there was a woman on Maplewood Street who ran a small operation called the Sweet Alchemy. Said her work was different. Said she made things you didn't forget. I went at 7 in the morning because I don't wait in lines and I don't call ahead. The shop was small, clean. The kind of warmth that comes not from decoration but from genuine activity, from something real being made inside it. The smell alone stopped me in the doorway, vanilla and almond, and something I couldn't identify that had no name except home. I stepped inside and stood in the reception area looking at the photographs she had mounted on the walls. Her creations. I am not a man who stops to look at things. I assess, evaluate, and move. But I stood in front of those photographs longer than I'd intended to, because what was on the walls was not food. It was architecture. It was engineering executed with the sensitivity of a painter, wedding cakes that built upward like skylines, sugar sculptures that caught light the way stained glass does, botanical designs so precise they looked like something from a natural history museum. I was examining one of the photographs when I heard footsteps behind me. She came through a swinging door, wiping her hands on her apron, flour on her forearm, dark hair pulled back. She was already talking before she'd fully registered me, telling her assistant she'd be out in 5 minutes, redirecting a delivery question. And when she finally looked up and saw me standing there, she didn't do what most people do when they see me for the first time in a professional context. She didn't recalibrate. She didn't perform. She just looked. "Mr. Cross," her assistant said behind her unnecessarily. "Marino," I said. "Luca Marino." She nodded once. "Miss Caruso, what's the occasion?" "My mother's 60th birthday, 3 weeks from today." She waited. When I didn't continue, she said, "Tell me about her." I blinked. I don't blink. "What do you mean?" Her voice was patient, not accommodating. There's a difference. She was asking a genuine question, not performing interest, not filling silence. She wanted to know. "Her favorite things," she said. "What makes her stop and stare? What does she love when nobody's asking her to love anything particular?" No one had ever asked me that question before. Not in a professional context. Not in a personal one either, if I was honest about it. She collects vintage botanical illustrations, I heard myself say. Orchids, specifically. She has a greenhouse she tends every morning before the rest of the house is awake. She says orchids are proof that nature can be both delicate and impossible at the same time. Sophia smiled. Not a professional smile. A real one. The kind that starts behind the eyes and arrives at the mouth last. I can work with that, she said. For the next 20 minutes we talked about my mother. Not about fondant versus buttercream. Not about budget or timeline or the number of guests. Those details came later, handled practically, without drama. We talked about Rose's library, shelves of 19th century botanical prints she'd collected over 4 decades. About the greenhouse she maintained with a precision that rivaled anything I'd ever built. About what it means to raise 3 children alone in a city that doesn't hand you anything. And to do it without complaint. And without ever once making the children feel like a burden. She never remarried, I said at some point. Said she'd already had her great love. That everything else was just noise. Sophia looked at me with something careful in her expression. That's rare, she said. Real love usually is. Something in the air shifted. Something I noticed and categorized and did not act on because I am, above everything else, a disciplined man. Her assistant's phone rang in the back office and broke the moment. I cleared my throat. Can you make it? The cake? Yes, she said. She was already sketching in her mind. I could see it in the way her eyes had gone slightly inward, the way her hands had stilled at her sides. Hand-painted orchids, each one different, watercolor effect on white fondant, delicate but fierce. She held out her hand. I gave her my business card. She glanced at it. Her expression shifted, slightly. A brief recalculation, the recognition of the name, the weight it carried in this city. Then she looked back up at me and her expression returned to exactly what it had been before. She decided in real time that it didn't change anything. Is something wrong? I asked. No, I just hadn't connected the name. She set the card down on the counter. It doesn't change the cake. No, I said, it doesn't. I headed for the door, then stopped. Sophia, I said. May I call you Sophia? She nodded. Thank you for asking about her. About what she loves. He paused. Most people want to know what I'll pay. She held my gaze. Most people miss the point. I left. Sat in my car for 2 minutes outside her shop before starting the engine. In 43 years, I had never sat in my car outside someone's place of business for 2 minutes doing nothing. Mother's birthday party, I called the bakery myself. Not through my assistant, not through my office. I picked up my own phone and dialed the number. She cried, I told Sophia when she answered. When she saw the orchids. She actually stopped talking entirely for about 30 seconds and then she cried. She told me someone finally understood her. There was a pause on the line. I could hear she was in the kitchen, the low hum of ovens, the sound of metal tools on a marble surface. I'm so glad, she said. She wasn't performing warmth, she meant it. I'd like to place another order, I said. My company's annual gala, 200 guests. I want you to create something no one will forget. What's the brief? There isn't one. Complete creative freedom, no parameters, silence. Mr. Marino, Luca, she corrected herself, Luca. Complete creative freedom is dangerous. I might create something you hate. I doubt that. But if you do, I'll eat my words along with the cake. She laughed. It was the first time I'd heard her laugh. I noticed it the way you notice a sound you didn't know you'd been waiting for. That's a terrible joke. I'm told I'm not funny. You're doing something to my instincts. When I'd seen the gala cake, geometric, midnight blue and gold, sharp angles and clean lines that somehow perfectly reflected the Marino Group's downtown tower without my ever describing it to her, I went completely still in the middle of my own conference room. She'd brought it herself, set it up without assistance, was standing to the side when I walked in, watching my face. You hate it, she said. No. I walked around it slowly. I'm trying to understand how you knew. Knew what? That this is exactly what I would have built if I had any talent at all. Something moved in her expression. Surprise, I thought, or something warmer than surprise. You have a gift for seeing people, I told her, for understanding what they can't say. She looked down at her hands. Thank you. I meant every word. After that, I became a regular client. Corporate events, family celebrations, gifts for business partners who needed to be impressed by something genuinely irreplaceable rather than simply expensive. Sophia's work was becoming known in the right circles, and the right circles were beginning to understand the difference between price and value. But somewhere between the third and the fourth order, something shifted in the dynamic. The calls began lasting longer. I started going to the bakery myself, in person, rather than phoning in orders or sending someone from my office. Early in the mornings, when her assistant Maya hadn't arrived yet, when the shop was quiet and warm and smelled like the beginning of something, I told myself it was efficiency, that I preferred to discuss the details of complex orders face to face. I was lying to myself. I'm experienced enough to recognize the lie, and honest enough to admit I didn't stop. She never asked why I kept appearing at 7 in the morning. She made coffee and we talked. About her work, about mine and the sanitized version I offered to the legitimate world. About the city, about the businesses we both ran in it. About what it meant to build something genuinely yours in a landscape designed to extract everything it could from you first. Your family must be proud, I said one morning, watching her shape sugar flowers with hands that moved with the precision of a surgeon and the sensitivity of something entirely else. Building all of this from nothing. Her hands slowed. She was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that isn't empty. They think it's nice, she said finally. Nice. Her voice had been carefully neutral, but I heard what was underneath it. I've spent my life reading what people mean under what they say. They have different definitions of success, she continued. Corporate positions, numbers, things you can put on a table and compare to someone else's numbers. And you can't put this on a table. She shaped a petal, didn't look at me. Not in my family. I picked up one of her finished flowers from the drying rack, held it up to the light coming through the kitchen window. It was almost translucent. A perfect thing. Then your family is blind, I said. She looked at me quickly like the words had surprised her, like she hadn't expected anyone to say them out loud in a sentence that simple. That was 8 weeks before the phone call, before the wedding, before everything. Now let me tell you about the Caruso family, because you need to understand what Sophia had been living inside before you can understand why one call at midnight changed everything. The trouble started 6 weeks before the wedding, at Valentina's engagement party. Sophia arrived at her parents' house with champagne and a tray of her famous chocolate truffles. Each one handmade, each one perfect, the way everything she made was perfect. Not through obsession, but through genuine care, the kind you can't manufacture or perform. She found her family in the formal living room, her mother, Carmela Caruso, holding court in tailored silk. Her sister Valentina, holding her newly engaged hand at a particular angle, the stone catching light. Her father, Eduardo, silver-haired, distinguished in the way that requires money and a quiet acceptance of entitlement. And Renzo, the fiancé, a corporate attorney from the right family, with the right connections, and the right ability to make everyone feel comfortable about his place in the room. Sophia set her champagne and truffles on the side table and stepped forward to greet her sister. Valentina, she said, I can schedule a tasting whenever you're ready. I'd love to do something special for the wedding cake. Whatever you're dreaming of, tell me and we'll build it. There was an exchange of looks between her mother and her sister, subtle, practiced. Actually, her mother said, her voice honey-warm, we were hoping you'd donate it. Your gift to us, you know. Family gives what they can. The word donate landed in Sophia's stomach like cold water. She told me this later. That particular word wrapped in that particular tone. Valentina's blue eyes went wide immediately, wounded. I thought you'd want to do this for me. I'm your sister. Of course I want to be part of your wedding, Sophia said carefully. But Val, a cake for 200 people. The ingredients alone for that scale, plus my time. It's always money with you, Eduardo said from his armchair without looking up from his phone. The casualness of it. The way he didn't even bother to frame it as an argument, just a verdict delivered sideways. Sophia said, I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about what it takes. We've always supported your little shop, her mother interrupted. Recommended you to friends, talked you up at parties. The least you could do is one cake for your sister's wedding. The least you could do. Sophia had heard those words all her life, in different configurations for different requests, disguised as different things, but always the same fundamental calculation. You owe us. You always owe us. There is no amount of giving that discharges the debt. Okay, she heard herself say, I'll do it. Wonderful, her mother said, clapping her hands together as though a performance had reached its natural conclusion. Now we're thinking 10 tiers, white fondant with gold leaf, sugar flowers to match the bouquet. 10 tiers, Sophia said. Her voice rose slightly despite herself. Mom, that's not a cake. That's an installation. That would take 2 weeks of full-time work minimum. The materials alone. You said you'd do it, Valentina said immediately. Are you backing out already? I'm just trying to have a conversation about what's realistic. Why are you always like this? Valentina stood. Why do you always make everything difficult? I'm getting married, Hannah. This is supposed to be the most important time of my life. And you're picking apart logistics while I'm standing here trying to imagine my wedding day. Sophia said, I'm not picking anything apart. I just want to discuss. Forget it. Valentina's eyes were glittering, precise tears on a precise cue. Just forget I asked. I'll find someone who actually wants to be part of this wedding. Valentina, wait. But her sister had already swept from the room, with Renzo trailing dutifully behind her, leaving Sophia standing alone with her parents. Her mother looked at her with an expression that would have read as concern to anyone who didn't know better. Look what you've done, Carmela said. Her father had already returned to his phone. Sophia left that evening with a commitment to create a 10-tier wedding cake for free, a project that would cost her thousands in materials and consume 2 full weeks of her professional life. At the precise moment when she had other orders waiting, other clients she'd have to delay, another layer of her own foundation she wouldn't be able to build. She went home and she started working on it anyway. The cake became her obsession in the weeks that followed. She sketched until her hand cramped. She tested flavor combinations until Maya begged her to stop. She decided on champagne vanilla with raspberry preserves and Swiss meringue buttercream. Each tier a different height to create visual drama. The sugar flowers alone, peonies and roses and delicate sweet pea blossoms, each petal painted by hand with edible luster dust, took 40 hours to complete. I stopped by the bakery in the final week. She was at the work table, piping royal icing details onto a practice tier with a steadiness that belonged to another kind of discipline entirely. What's this for? I asked. My sister's wedding. I leaned closer, studied the piece, the precision of it, the sheer density of thought and skill in every element. It's extraordinary, I said, genuinely. The level of detail here, Sophia, this is museum-quality work. A flush of real pride crossed her face. Thank you. How much are they paying you? The question caught her off guard. She set down her tool. They're not. It's my gift to her. I went still. Your gift. She's my sister. This represents, I said carefully, 2 weeks of full-time work, hundreds of hours. The materials alone must run into thousands of dollars. It's fine. She said it the way people say it when they've decided in advance that they aren't allowed to think otherwise. Sophia, it's fine, Luca, really. I looked at the cake. At the 40 hours of hand-painted flowers, at the precision and the love and the weeks of her life that she was preparing to give to people who would call it a gift, as though she were simply extending them a courtesy. Do they know what this costs? I asked. What you're giving up in other orders to make this? Their family, she said again. That's not an answer. She set down her piping bag. Why does it matter to you? Because I've watched you work, I said. I've seen what it takes. I've seen people pay significant money for pieces that don't come close to what you produce. And the fact that your own family expects you to simply donate it. I shook my head. It's not right, I said. What they're doing, it's not right. You don't understand family dynamics. I understand exploitation, I said. The word landed between us, ugly and accurate. She wanted to argue. I could see the reflex in her, the lifetime of conditioning that told her to smooth things over, to find the charitable interpretation, to protect the people who'd trained her to protect them. Instead, she looked at the cake, at the weeks of her life in sugar and buttercream and 40 hours of hand-painted flowers. They're not bad people, she said quietly. They don't see things the way you do. I studied her face for a long moment. The question is, I said, How do you see things? Her assistant called from the front before she could answer. The moment passed, but the question didn't. Tell me you're free, I said before she could speak. I have a business dinner I'm dreading and I need someone to rescue me from myself. She laughed. Are you asking me on a date or hiring me as cover? Can it be both? She should have said no. We both knew that. There are certain lines in a life built the way mine is built that don't bend without consequences. Don't bring someone clean into something complicated. That has always been the rule. She said yes anyway, and I drove to her building at 7 o'clock. The restaurant was a small Italian place in the old quarter, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles, and absolutely nothing corporate about it. No photographers, no business associates, no one performing anything for anyone. I thought you were dreading a business dinner, she said when she saw where we'd stopped. I lied. His smile was unapologetic. I just wanted to see you. Was that wrong? Her heart did something. I could see it in the way she inhaled and looked at her menu. That depends on your intentions. My intentions, I said slowly, are to spend an evening with someone who makes me forget about quarterly reports and operational pressures and all the noise that fills every other hour of my week. Is that acceptable? We talked for 3 hours about her dreams for a second location, a proper studio where she could teach as well as create, about the frustration of having built something real that her family refused to take seriously, about her father's dismissiveness, her mother's particular brand of warmth that had hooks in it, about my own family, about the weight of inheriting a name that carries more history than most people can imagine, and the particular challenge of trying to be something other than that history without pretending it doesn't exist. She listened the way she'd listened about my mother's orchids, not waiting for her turn to speak, actually present. Somewhere between the second course and the dessert, I moved my hand across the table and covered hers. Neither of us mentioned it. Can I tell you something? I said. Anything, she said. The first time I walked into your shop, I said, I had one intention. Place an order and never return. I don't develop personal relationships with vendors. It's a long-standing policy. She waited. And then you asked about my mother, I said. Not about the timeline, not about the delivery window, about her. Who she was, what she loved, what would actually reach her. And I sat there and I thought, I've never met anyone who does that. She looked down at our hands. Her thumb moved almost involuntarily against mine. I don't know what to do with this, she said quietly. You don't have to do anything with it tonight, I said. I just needed you to know. In the car outside her building, the city pressing in through the windshield, I turned to face her. What your family is doing, I said, is not okay. Please, Luca. I know you don't want to hear it. But someone who actually sees you should say it clearly. The way they take what you produce and call it obligation. The way they measure your worth by their capacity to dismiss it. That's not love. That's a system. And you've been running in it your whole life. She reached for the door handle. They're all I have, she said. I caught her hand gently. Is that actually true? She looked at me. You have a business you built alone, I said. You have talent that is genuinely extraordinary. You have people who value your work in the real world, in the world outside your family's definition of it. And you have... I stopped myself. She waited. Someone who would very much like to be more than your client. Her breath caught. I'm not asking for an answer tonight, I said. I just want you to consider the possibility that you deserve better than what they give you. And then I kissed her. Soft and careful, like something I wasn't sure I had the right to do. She leaned into it. Her hand came up to my chest and stayed there. When we finally separated, both of us were quiet for a long moment. Good night, Sophia, I said. She floated up to her apartment. I sat in my car in the dark for longer than I'll admit. For the first time in my adult life, I was not thinking about tomorrow's agenda. I was thinking about the next time I'd see her. Can you come get me? She called the Mafia boss, from her sister's wedding. The wedding was on a Saturday in June. The June humidity clung to everything like a second skin. The Hargrove estate in its full summer splendor, ornamental hedges, 200 meters of white gravel drive, French doors along the west terrace throwing warm gold light across the lawn, where tent canopies had been erected with the precision of a military campaign. From the outside, through those crystal doors, it looked like a fairy tale. Sophia told me about it later, all of it. Sitting in my car while I drove and then sitting on my couch with the city below us and the night wrapped around the windows, while the adrenaline finally left her system and the weight of everything she'd survived that day settled in. She arrived that morning as a bridesmaid. She wore the lavender dress they'd chosen for her, 2 sizes too small. The seams cut into her ribs with each breath, had since the final fitting when she'd quietly mentioned to her mother that the fit was wrong. Patricia, Carmela, had smiled that particular smile, the one that looked warm to people who were watching but froze something in Sophia every time. "You've always run a little larger than Valentina," her mother had said, her voice honey-sweet in front of the seamstress. "Perhaps this will motivate you." The seamstress had looked at her hands. Sophia had said nothing. She never said anything. She had been trained not to. Before the ceremony, the photographer arrived. 45 minutes of family photographs on the east lawn. Every combination imaginable. Parents with both daughters, parents and bride alone, parents and bridesmaids, grandparents with everyone, sisters together, sisters with Renzo, Renzo with the family, Valentina with each parent separately. Sophia told me she stepped forward automatically at the call for all the girls. A reflex born from 28 years of assuming she belonged. Her mother's hand landed on her shoulder. "Just Valentina and her bridesmaids for this set, darling. We need the aesthetic to stay consistent." Sophia said, "But I'm wearing the same dress as—" Her mother was already turning away. The photographer glanced at Sophia with an expression she described as helpless, like he understood but had no jurisdiction. She stood to the side and watched for 45 minutes while her family arranged and rearranged themselves in every configuration that did not include her. She counted her own exclusion the way you count a bruise with your fingers, pressing to confirm it's there, pressing again because you still can't quite believe it. During the ceremony, she sat alone in the back row. During the cocktail hour, she helped the caterers when someone spilled champagne near the dessert table, because it was instinct to be useful, because 28 years of training had made usefulness her default position. During dinner, she found her place card at a table of distant relatives who couldn't remember her last name. People who asked what she did and then looked past her to find someone more interesting when she told them. She told herself it was fine, that she was being oversensitive, that every family had dynamics, that Valentina was the focus today and Sophia was being selfish, expecting anything from anyone. Then came the announcement. Eduardo Caruso rose from the head table during dessert. The room quieted immediately. He had that kind of presence, the kind that has been cultivated over decades by someone who has never had to ask for a room's attention. "Before we continue with dancing," he said, "Patricia and I have some news we'd like to share. As most of you know, we've been considering downsizing for some time, now that both our girls are settled." He smiled his warm, paternal smile, the one Sophia had spent her life trying to earn. "We found a lovely condo downtown, just the two of us, as it should be at this stage." Applause, Valentina beaming, Renzo nodding approvingly. "Which means," Carmela continued, rising beside her husband, "we'll be finalizing the sale of the family home." And Sophia, her mother's eyes found her across the room. "Sweetheart," said with warmth, said with 200 witnesses, "you'll need to arrange your own living situation. We're giving you 30 days. That should be more than enough time, shouldn't it?" The room went quiet in a different way. Sophia sat very still. 30 days. Announced at her sister's wedding reception. Announced publicly in front of 200 people, with the same tone her mother used when discussing which flowers to order for the centerpieces. She felt every eye in the room rotate to find her. The family disappointment. The difficult one. Let's see how she takes it. She stood. The dress cut into her ribs. She set her napkin on the table with the care of someone trying very hard to look like nothing is happening. "Excuse me," she said to no one in particular. She walked out, not running, walking, back straight. Through the east corridor, out the side door, across the terrace, down the steps to the west garden, until she found the marble steps along the garden wall, tucked behind the ornamental hedges, out of sight of every French door and every face pressed to every window. She sat down, took off her shoes because the matching heels had been giving her blisters since the ceremony, and no one had noticed her limping for 4 hours. Pulled out her phone. Her thumb moved through her contacts to a name. Luca Marino. She stared at it. Inside, someone clinked a glass. Valentina's laughter, that perfect crystalline sound, rose above the music, above the champagne, above everything. Sophia pressed call. I was in the middle of a toast when my phone vibrated. I saw her name. I handed my glass to the man beside me. Hannah, I said. Old habit. Caught myself. Sophia. The pause before she spoke was 3 seconds long. I know because I counted them. I need you to come get me. Where are you? The Hargrove estate. My sister's wedding. She stopped. Her voice had the particular texture of someone who has been holding something in for hours and is about to stop holding. I can't do this anymore. I don't know what I mean by that exactly, but I can't be here anymore and I don't have anywhere else to call. I was already walking. Stay on the line with me, I told her. I'm getting my keys, 15 minutes, maybe 12. Talk to me. So she talked. And as I drove through the city, she told me everything. About the photographs. About the table of strangers who couldn't remember her name. About the announcement. About 30 days delivered to 200 witnesses like a lease termination. I didn't interrupt. I've learned that there are moments when the most useful thing you can do is shut up and listen, and this was one of them. When she went quiet, I said simply, "Still there?" "Still here," she said. "Almost to you. Hold on." I'd been at a formal event myself, still in the tuxedo, tie loosened by then, the jacket I'd worn inside now in my hand. I pulled up to the West Garden entrance and cut the engine. She was on the marble steps, barefoot, hair half fallen from the updo, mascara underneath her eyes, the lavender dress pulling wrong across her shoulders, shaking slightly, not from cold, though the night had turned chill, from hours of being invisible and then finally letting herself feel what that costs. She stood when she saw me, and that's when I saw that she'd been crying. Not the controlled kind, the real kind, the kind that comes when you finally stop pretending. I crossed the distance without thinking about anything except getting to her. I looked at her face, at the dress that didn't fit, at the bare feet, at the mascara and the shaking hands, and the expression of someone who has finally accepted something they'd been fighting not to see. "Who do I need to destroy?" I said. The laugh surprised us both. A broken, watery sound, completely genuine. "All of them," she said, "none of them. I genuinely don't know anymore." I took off my jacket and put it around her shoulders. It was still warm from the event. It smelled like the evening I'd just left, like expensive nothing, which seemed exactly right. "Come on," I said. "Let's get you out of here." She looked back at the estate, at the warm light in every window, the celebration full and uninterrupted, continuing as though nothing had happened, as though someone hadn't just walked out, as though she'd never been there at all. "I should go back in," she said. "Tell them I'm leaving, that's the polite thing." I let her sit with that for a moment. "Do you have to?" I said. I watched her face, watched her weigh it, the training against the truth, the instinct to smooth against the exhaustion of smoothing. "No," she whispered. "I guess I don't." She took my hand. Her fingers were cold. I closed mine around them. "There she is," I said quietly. We were halfway to the car when the terrace doors burst open behind us. Sophia, her mother's voice, cut through the June night like a blade through silk, sharp, controlled, carrying exactly as far as it needed to carry. "Sophia Whitmore. Caruso, where do you think you are going?" I felt Sophia's hand tighten, felt her body turn before she'd made a conscious decision to. "Don't," I said quietly. "You don't owe her an explanation." But 28 years of conditioning pulled her around anyway. Caruso came across the terrace in her heels with the purposeful click of a woman who has never in her life accepted that a room might not be hers. She was backlit by the party behind her, emerald silk, every hair in place, expression cycling between fury and calculation faster than most people blink. Her eyes swept over me, over the tuxedo, the car behind us, the way I was standing. I watched her arrive at a number, I watched her decide what that number meant for this situation. "And who exactly is this?" she said. Her voice had already shifted, the sharp edge pulling back, replaced by the version designed for important rooms. "Luca Marino. I didn't offer my hand. I'm taking Sophia home." A pause. Recognition moving through her expression like a key finding a lock. "Cross Industries. The Marino Group," she corrected herself, the name landing differently now. "That's correct, Mr. Marino." Her tone recalibrated entirely, warm and apologetic and professional, the way people speak when they understand they've been behaving poorly in front of someone who matters. "I want to apologize for Sophia's behavior tonight. She's been under a great deal of stress lately. She has a tendency toward the dramatic." "She is under stress," I said, "because you have spent her entire life dismantling her confidence and then calling it love." I kept my voice level. That discipline took effort. The undervoice wanted something different. "How dare you? How dare I?" I stepped forward slightly, still holding Sophia's hand. "How dare you announce you're evicting your daughter at her sister's wedding reception? How dare you commission a masterpiece worth thousands of dollars from her and call it a gift? How dare you spend this entire evening excluding her from family photographs while she stood 10 feet away in the same dress as everyone else?" He paused. "How dare you stuff her into a dress that doesn't fit and then use it to remind her that she's always been less than her sister?" Carmela's face had gone from red to white to something past both. "You know nothing about our family," she said. "I know your daughter is the most talented person in this city," I said. "I know she has built something extraordinary with her own hands, without your help, without your acknowledgement, without your permission. I know she deserves to take up space in the world without apologizing for it, and I know that not a single person inside that building has treated her tonight like she matters." His eyes found Carmela's. "I've seen a lot of things in my life that I'm not proud of," I said quietly. "But at least when I take from someone, I don't call it family." Carmela's mouth opened and closed. For the first time Sophia would ever tell me about, her mother had no response. "Sophia," Carmela finally said, turning to her daughter, shifting tactics without a moment's hesitation. "Are you going to stand there and allow him to speak to me this way?" The question hung in the garden air. A month ago that question would have worked. Sophia would have apologized, would have managed the situation, smoothed the edges, made everyone comfortable at the cost of herself. That was what 28 years of training produced. She looked at her mother instead. Really looked at her. The woman who had criticized every pound, every career choice, every unquantifiable dream. Who had taken 2 weeks of her life's work and dressed it up as obligation. Who had left her out of family photographs at her own sister's wedding. Who had announced her eviction to 200 strangers with the tone of a landlord updating a lease. "Yeah," Sophia said quietly. "I am." She turned toward my car without waiting for a response. Carmela's voice followed us across the gravel. "You're making a mistake. You're throwing away your entire family for a man you barely know. You know what he is. You know what kind of family that is. When this falls apart, and it will fall apart, don't come back expecting us to be waiting." Sophia kept walking. "The only mistake I ever made," she said without turning, "was not doing this sooner." I opened the passenger door. She got in. I closed it with the quiet finality of something that doesn't need to announce itself. As I walked around to the driver's side, I caught movement in the estate windows. Faces pressed to the glass. Valentina, Eduardo, the 200 witnesses to a family's cruelty, now watching its consequences move down the driveway. Good, I thought. Let them watch. We drove through the city without speaking for the first several minutes. Sophia's head against the window, my jacket still around her shoulders. The city lights smearing past in long streaks of gold. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Ask me again in an hour." We drove. Somewhere around the river crossing, she said, "I'm homeless." Her voice had a disbelieving quality, like she was reporting a fact that hadn't finished being real. "I'm actually homeless. I walked out of my sister's wedding. I just said those things to my mother in front of her guests, and I have nowhere to live." "You're here tonight," I said, "but—" "Tomorrow is tomorrow's problem," I said. "Tonight, you breathe." My building was 15 minutes from the estate. The doorman, James, who has worked my building for 11 years and has never once reacted to anything with more than professional composure, opened Sophia's door before she'd reached for the handle. "Welcome back, Mr. Marino. James, this is Sophia. She'll be staying." "Of course, sir." In the private elevator, she looked at her reflection in the polished doors. Mascara lines, hair fallen from the updo, barefoot on the marble, someone else's jacket around her shoulders. "I look like a disaster," she said. "You look like someone who just made the hardest decision of their life," I told her. "Those aren't mutually exclusive." "No," I said, "they're not." The penthouse opened around us. Floor-to-ceiling windows the entire length of the south wall. The city spread below like a map of everything possible. Modern furniture, clean lines, everything ordered with the particular aesthetic of someone who has spent decades in control of their surroundings. She stood in the middle of the living room, and I watched her feel the size of what she'd done settling in. The adrenaline beginning its retreat, the weight of it filling the space. I got her water, sat beside her on the couch, took her hands when they were shaking. "I'm going to throw up," she said suddenly. "That's adrenaline. Breathe through it." She breathed. I held her hands until the shaking reduced. After a long moment, she said, "What happens tomorrow?" "Tomorrow we address the practical things. Your belongings, your apartment, which is technically your parents' garage, so we'll need to move quickly. The logistics of your new situation." He squeezed her hands. "But right now, tonight, you're going to breathe and acknowledge that what you did this evening took more courage than most people manage in a lifetime." "Courage," she said. The word was flat. "I ran away from a wedding." "You chose yourself." He met her eyes. "That's different." "Is it?" "Running away is fear. What you did tonight was clarity. You saw the situation and you made a decision. Those are not the same thing." She leaned her head on my shoulder. The exhaustion had finally arrived, that specific exhaustion that comes after sustained adrenaline. I could feel her breathing slow. "What if I made the wrong decision?" she said quietly. "Do you actually think you did?" She thought about it, about the photographs, about the dinner table, about the announcement, about the wedding cake she'd spent 2 weeks of her life building, dismissed in 5 seconds with the word fine. "No," she whispered. "I don't think I did." "Then stop second-guessing yourself." We sat like that for a long time, the city glittering through the glass below us. Thousands of lights, thousands of lives, thousands of possibilities. Her phone buzzed on the cushion beside her, her mother's number. She picked it up and deleted the notification. Then she did it again when the next one arrived. I watched her do this and said nothing. Sometimes the right kind of support is simply being present while someone decides what they're capable of. She fell asleep against my shoulder before midnight. I moved her to the guest room without waking her. Left a t-shirt and sweatpants folded on the nightstand. Wrote a brief note in the handwriting that my mother has always said looks like someone doing architecture. "Coffee will be ready. Take all the time you need." I stood in the doorway for a moment. In 43 years of running a life the way mine has been run, I have never stood in a doorway and felt what I felt in that moment. I didn't have a name for it that night. I've found one since. She appeared in the kitchen the next morning wearing my t-shirt and looking like someone who had slept for the first time in weeks. "2 sugars," she said before I could ask. "Cream." I had the mug waiting. She climbed onto a bar stool and wrapped both hands around it and looked out the window at the city below. A city that looked different from up here than it did from any of the places she'd lived in it. "How did you sleep?" I asked. "Better than I had any right to." "You had every right to." She looked at her phone on the counter beside her. 17 missed calls. Text messages stacked behind a preview she hadn't opened. "Block them?" I asked. "No." She picked it up, looked at the screen, set it face down. "Not yet. I need to do this at my own speed or I won't actually do it. I'll just react." That was, I thought, a more considered answer than most people manage on no sleep after the night she'd had. "I texted Maya," she said. "Your assistant? She's coming at 11 to help me get my things out of the garage apartment before my parents change the locks." Sophia looked at me. "I need to do that myself, without you there." "I know." She met my eyes. "I'm not saying that to be cruel." "I know," I said again. "You're saying it because you're right." She blinked. like she'd expected more resistance. You need it to be yours, I said. The walking out, the packing, the confrontation, if there is one. It has to be something you did, not something I did for you. Otherwise, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if you were capable of it. She was quiet for a moment. How do you know that? She asked. Because I've been running other people's operations since I was 19 years old, I said. And the only things I'm actually proud of are the ones I built myself. Her phone rang at 9:43. She looked at the screen. Valentina. Don't, I said from the kitchen doorway. I have to, she said. The reflex was already in her hand, her thumb already moving toward the green button. I have to at least hear her. She answered. I stayed where I was. I could hear the sound of Valentina's voice through the phone from across the room. High, sharp, a controlled fury that had probably been rehearsed during the ride over. The words came fast. Scene, embarrassment, selfish, everyone talking. My wedding, my day. Sophia listened without responding. Then something changed in her face. I watched the shift happen in real time. Something that had been held long and tight finally releasing. Not collapsing, releasing. Like a fist opening. Your wedding went on for 4 more hours after I left, she said. Her voice was steady in a way I hadn't heard from her before. I don't think I ruined anything. More from Valentina, the voice rising. His name is Luca Marino. Sophia glanced at me briefly. He's not random. He's someone who treats me like I matter. A pause. You know what's actually something to think about? Sophia said. Making your sister build a 10-tier wedding cake for free. Fitting her into a dress 2 sizes too small and then reminding her in front of the seamstress that she runs larger than you. Excluding her from every family photograph at your own reception while she stands 20 feet away in the same dress as everyone else. Announcing her eviction to 200 people between the entree and the dancing. She paused. Let the silence hold. Those things happened, she said. I was there. I know what happened. Valentina said something. Sophia listened. I'm not coming home, Sophia said quietly. I'm not apologizing. And I'm genuinely done pretending that what this family does is normal. She hung up before her sister could respond. Her hands were shaking again, but it was different from the shaking the night before. The night before had been collapse. This was aftermath. The shaking that comes after you've done something that can't be undone, and your body is still catching up to the decision your mind already made. Are you okay? I asked. She set down her phone, put both palms flat on the counter. That's the second time in 12 hours that I've said something true to someone in my family, she said. It's exhausting, but it's less exhausting than saying nothing. That ratio will improve, I said. She looked at me. Promise? I think so. I poured her more coffee. The first ones are always the hardest. Maya arrived at the bakery at 11, as planned. They went together, Maya's car, no fanfare. Sophia had asked me not to send anyone from my organization to help secure the building or manage the property, which she technically would have been within her rights to accept, since her parents had given her 30 days. She didn't want it that way. I respected that. She told me about it that evening over takeout containers on my couch, the city going dark outside the windows, both of us in comfortable clothes with nowhere to be. The converted garage apartment. I had never seen it myself, but she described it in the flat voice of someone who has normalized something they shouldn't have had to normalize. Small, narrower than my home office. A sleeping alcove separated from the main room by a curtain because there wasn't a proper door. A kitchenette that couldn't comfortably accommodate 2 people. $800 a month, paid to her parents for 6 years, which she had been told was helping with the mortgage. Maya's reaction when she walked in. Holy hell, you've been living in a closet. They packed quickly. 24 containers. Her clothes, her books, her personal baking equipment. Tools that represented years of careful investment, each one chosen for a specific purpose. 6 years of a life, fitting into what they could carry in 2 trips. She was wrapping the last of her kitchen equipment in dish towels when the side gate opened, her mother's heels on the concrete. Carmela Caruso arrived looking immaculate, pressed linen, every hair in place. The armor of a woman who has decided that appearance is character. I knew you'd come back eventually, she said. Sophia, I'm prepared to discuss this rationally if you're ready to behave like an adult. Sophia straightened, kept her voice level. I'm not coming back. I'm getting my things. You gave me 30 days. I'm making it easier for everyone. Don't be dramatic. Her mother stepped into the small space, shrinking it further by the force of her presence. Your father and I talked this over. You can stay if you apologize. Apologize for what? For embarrassing us. For walking out of your sister's wedding. For bringing that man to humiliate me in front of our guests. Sophia looked at her. Really looked at her. The way, she told me later, that you look at something you've been seeing for years and finally decide to actually see. I have nothing to apologize for, Sophia said. I didn't embarrass anyone. I left a party where I was excluded from family photographs, seated with strangers, used as staff during the rehearsal dinner, and publicly given an eviction notice by my parents. We were sharing family news. You were humiliating me. There's a difference. This is about that man, Carmela said, the tone shifting, going soft and venomous at the same time. You think because he has money he can replace your family? That a man like that actually wants someone like you? He has a type, Sophia, and it's not a baker from Maplewood Street. He treats me like I matter, Sophia said, without conditions, without keeping score. That's more than I can say for this family. You sound like a naive child. No, Sophia picked up the last box. I sound like someone who finally has the courage to see things clearly. Her mother's voice changed, went cold and calculating in a way that meant the performance had ended and the real thing was speaking. If you walk out with those boxes, she said, don't expect to come back. Don't expect us to welcome you home when this fantasy falls apart. Don't expect family when you've decided family doesn't matter to you. Sophia turned to face her mother one final time. The only thing I ever wanted, she said quietly, was for you to see me. Not an idea of me. Not a version of me that fit conveniently into your sense of what this family looked like. Just me. The actual person standing in front of you. She picked up the box. I've stopped waiting for that, she said. And she walked out. Her father appeared as they were loading the last items into Maya's car. Eduardo Caruso in his golf clothes, silver-haired, distinguished, looking with an expression that couldn't quite settle between confusion and the old familiar dismissal. What exactly is all this? He said, as though it might still be something that could be explained away. I'm moving out early, Sophia said. Easier than dragging it out. Patricia, your mother. What's happening here? Your daughter, Sophia said without stopping, is taking her things and leaving. Because you gave her 30 days. She kept loading. Because you announced it in public. She closed the trunk. Because she has decided to stop explaining herself to people who've already decided the explanation doesn't matter. Eduardo's face flickered. The discomfort of a man who is rarely asked to be accountable. You're being oversensitive. Your mother gets excited, says things without thinking. The announcement was poorly timed, I'll give you that. But your reaction. When is the last time you told me you were proud of me? Sophia cut him off. Eduardo opened his mouth. Don't guess, she said. I already know the answer. I know it because the answer is never. Not once. Not when I opened the bakery. Not when I was featured in the bridal magazines. Not when I built a waiting list. Not when I kept the business alive through every year you told me it would fail. She looked at him steadily. I don't need you to say it anymore, she said. I've stopped needing things from you. That's what freedom looks like, I think. You're going to regret this, Eduardo said. And for one brief moment his voice was something close to human. Family is everything, Sophia. When the rest of it falls away, family is what you have left. Sophia looked at her father, at this man who had dismissed her from armchairs, who had talked about real success over her head for 28 years, who had never come to the bakery, never asked what she was building, never offered anything except the particular cruelty of people who don't realize their indifference is a form of damage. Then I hope, she said, that you've built a better family than the one I grew up in. She got into Maya's car. They drove away. She didn't look back. Back at the penthouse, my doorman and I helped them carry everything up in 3 trips. Sophia directed the unpacking with the practiced economy of someone who has been managing limited space for years. Everything had a system, everything had a place. She worked quietly, efficiently, and when the last box was down, she stood in the middle of the guest room, and was still for a long moment. Maya hugged her before leaving. Tight, the kind of hug that doesn't need words around it. After the door closed, Sophia came and found me on the balcony. She sat down beside me without speaking. I handed her a glass of wine. She took it. The city below us was fully dark by then, lit in the particular gold of a Sunday night when the week hasn't started yet, and anything still feels possible. "How do you feel?" I asked. She thought about it. "Terrified," she said, "relieved. Like I just jumped off a building and I'm not sure yet if there's ground beneath me or not." "There's ground," I said. "You don't know that." "No, but I do know you're not falling alone." She leaned her head against my shoulder, the same way she had the night before, with the same weight and the same wordlessness, and I stayed very still so as not to disturb it. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it. Another message from Carmela. Sophia read it and deleted it without responding. Set the phone face down on the balcony table. "What did it say?" I asked. "That I'm being ridiculous," she said. "That all of this is a tantrum. That I've thrown away my family because I'm infatuated with a man I barely know, and when I come to my senses, I'll understand what I've lost." She looked out at the city. "Is she right?" she said quietly. "Am I being infatuated?" I considered the question seriously, the way it deserved to be considered. "You may be," I said. "I don't know for certain. But I do know that infatuation doesn't explain 28 years of being made small. I know that what you're walking away from isn't something you invented. It's something that happened to you over a very long time. And I know that whatever you feel about me, that's a separate question from whether you were right to leave." She was quiet. "You're very careful with me," she said finally. "I'd rather be careful now than careless later." She turned to look at me. "I fell asleep this morning," she said, "thinking that you're either the best thing that's ever happened to me or the most complicated." She paused. "I haven't ruled out that it might be both. Those aren't mutually exclusive either," I said. She smiled, small and real and exhausted. "Take me home," she said, and then stopped. "I mean, I know what you mean," I said. I stood and offered her my hand. This was the first time she'd called it home. I noted it and said nothing about it because some things deserve to settle before you pick them up and examine them. The days that followed had a particular quality that I'm not sure I can describe accurately to anyone who hasn't experienced something similar. Sophia went back to the bakery, threw herself into work with a focus that Maya described to me later as frightening in its precision. Orders went out perfectly. New inquiries came in. The business that Sophia had built alone, without acknowledgement, without family support, without anyone ever coming to the ribbon cutting, kept running. Meanwhile, I spent those mornings at the kitchen island with coffee and reports I wasn't reading, thinking about the woman in the guest room and the question of what exactly my role was in whatever this was becoming. I had resources. She had talent. Those two things don't automatically combine into something healthy. I'd seen enough of the world to know that money complicates almost everything it touches, that the line between helping someone and making them dependent is thinner than it appears, and that the last thing Sophia Caruso needed was to exchange one system of obligation for another. I was thinking about this on the third morning when she appeared in the kitchen doorway and said, "I need to go to the bakery, and I need to not think about my family for approximately 8 consecutive hours. Will you tell me where to find a decent breakfast near Maplewood?" "There's a place on 40th, I said. "Corner spot. They do a proper Eggs Benedict." She wrote it down. Then she looked at me. "Thank you," she said, "for not making this into something I have to perform gratitude for." I frowned slightly. "What?" "Some people, when they do something like this," she said, gesturing vaguely at the penthouse, at the guest room, at the situation, "want you to demonstrate that you understand what they've done. Want the gratitude to be visible and ongoing. I know. You're not doing that." "I'm not doing that." "Why?" "Because I didn't do this for gratitude." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she picked up her keys and went to work. "Can you come get me?" She called the Mafia boss, from her sister's wedding. I had been photographing her work for months. This was not something I'd announced or explained. Beginning with the botanical cake for my mother's birthday, I'd hired a photographer, the same man who documented the Marino Group's architectural commissions, and asked him to treat each of Sophia's pieces as he would treat a building. Study the angles, wait for the right light, Document the details that most people miss because they're too busy seeing the whole. I had 2 months of photographs when I brought them to Rebecca Novak. Rebecca ran the Carmichael Gallery on the Upper East Side of the city. She'd been documenting the intersection of culinary arts and fine art for almost a decade. She was precise, credentialed, and had no interest in being polite about things she didn't respect. I sat across from her in her office and watched her go through the photographs one by one. She didn't speak for almost 4 minutes. Then she said, "Where has this person been? Building a business on Maplewood Street, being ignored by her family, not understanding yet that what she makes is art." Rebecca looked up. "It's art," she said simply. "These aren't cakes. This is sculpture. This is painting. This is someone who has developed a vocabulary in an unconventional medium and is saying things with it that people who work in conventional mediums can't say." She set the photographs down. "Why is she making wedding cakes?" "Because no one has ever told her she didn't have to." "Tell me what you need from me," Rebecca said. 2 weeks after the wedding night, I told Sophia I wanted to take her somewhere. She didn't ask where. That was the thing about Sophia. She had a particular quality of trust that didn't require advance information. She showed up in the clothes she'd worn to the bakery that morning, flour still on her wrist, and got into my car without interrogating the destination. We drove to the Carmichael Gallery. Rebecca met us at the door with the warmth of someone who has been anticipating a meeting for a long time. "Sophia Caruso," she said. "I'm Rebecca Novak. I've been looking forward to this for weeks. I've been wanting to speak with you for months, actually," Sophia said carefully. "I've read your work on culinary arts." "Then come in. I have something to show you." The private viewing room had been transformed, floor to ceiling, her photographs. Not display prints, proper gallery mounts, the kind used for fine art, with proper lighting positioned to show the detail work. Her sugar sculptures, her botanical cakes, her geometric corporate pieces, her most intricate designs, all of them captured with the seriousness of architectural documentation. Sophia walked in and stopped. She moved from photograph to photograph slowly, the way someone moves through a room they're trying to memorize. Her face was careful and unreadable for the first minute. On the second minute, her hands came up and covered her mouth. "What is this?" she said. Her voice was very quiet. "I've been documenting your work," I said from behind her. "Everything you've made in the past 4 months. I wanted you to see what I see when I look at it. Luca." She turned. Her eyes were wet. "This isn't food," I said. "You already know that on some level. But you've been surrounded by people who will only allow it to be food. Because if it's art, then they have to acknowledge what you've been doing with your life. And what you've been doing with your life is extraordinary." Rebecca stepped forward. "I've been curating fine art for 20 years, she said. "I've shown painters whose work sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've represented sculptors who are in permanent museum collections. And I am telling you, as a professional whose entire career is built on recognizing what matters, what you do belongs in this building." Sophia stared at her. "You want to show my cakes in an art gallery?" "I want to show your work," Rebecca said, "in the context it deserves. Not as confectionery, as art. And I want to go further than photographs. I want you to create installation pieces, sugar sculptures designed for gallery viewing, not for consumption. Works that exist as permanent objects, not temporary celebrations." "What does that mean, permanent?" "It means you create something and it doesn't get eaten. It doesn't disappear in 4 hours at a reception. It exists for people to stand in front of and think about." Sophia looked at me. "Nobody has ever asked me to make something that lasts," she said. "I know." She turned back to the photographs, looked at them for a long time. "I'd want complete creative freedom," she said finally. "No brief, no client needs. Whatever I decide to make." Rebecca smiled. "That is exactly what I'm offering." Over the following weeks, Sophia Caruso began to build. Not just the installation pieces, though those consumed her nights and weekends with a focus that was almost frightening to observe. She built everything simultaneously. Victoria Chen found her 2 weeks after the wedding, after seeing Melissa's, Valentina's, cake in a photograph that one of the guests had posted. Victoria ran the most prestigious event planning firm in the city. She had 15 years of high-end weddings and corporate events behind her, and a reputation that meant her endorsement was worth more than most advertising campaigns. She came to the bakery on a Tuesday afternoon, looked at the space with the eye of someone who understood quality at a structural level, and made her assessment. "I need to know," Victoria said, "that personal complications won't affect professional commitments." "My personal life has never affected my professional work," Sophia said. "In fact, I'll tell you honestly, removing certain people from my life has made me a better artist, more present, more focused." "Good answer," Victoria said. "Here's my proposal. Trial basis, 3 months, 3 clients. If the work meets my standards, we discuss a formal partnership. You get consistent access to premium clients. I get to attach my name to work that actually deserves it. Everyone benefits." She extended her hand. Sophia shook it. That evening at the bakery, Maya stared at the ceiling for approximately 30 seconds before speaking. "Victoria Chen," she said. "Sophia, Victoria Chen just shook your hand." "I know. The first client she sends us has a $50,000 budget." "I know. We're going to need more staff. Already thinking about it." 3 weeks after the wedding, I took Sophia to my mother's house for lunch. She changed her outfit 3 times in the guest room before appearing in the kitchen doorway in the dress she'd started with. "You look exactly right," I told her. "You've been standing there watching me?" "For the last 10 minutes, yes." She crossed her arms. "That should bother me more than it does." I introduced her to Rosa Marino over the best chicken I've ever eaten, in the dining room of the house where I grew up, with Dante and Lucia making the particular effort that family makes when someone matters. Rosa, my mother, studied Sophia for approximately 30 seconds before deciding on her. "I've been waiting to meet you for months," she said. "My son has been intolerable. Do you know he called me twice in 1 week to describe a cake?" Sophia looked at me. "Twice?" "It was an exceptional cake," I said. "It was an exceptional cake," my mother confirmed. "And the person who made it has been on my mind ever since." She handed Sophia the breadbasket with the directness of someone who has decided a conversation has already been established, and formalities are a waste of time. "Tell me about your work." "Luca gives me summaries. I want the actual version." Sophia told her. About the bakery, about the sweet alchemy, about the clients and the compounds and the gallery show that was now 3 months away. My mother listened with the same quality of attention that I'd once thought was unique to me, the kind that makes the speaker feel like they're the only person in the room who matters. "You built this yourself," my mother said, "from nothing." "Yes, and your family." She left the question incomplete and waited. "They think it's nice," Sophia said, the same phrase she'd used with me months ago. Then she caught herself. "Used to think it was nice. We're not in contact anymore." My mother looked at her for a moment with the particular expression of a woman who has understood more about the world than she ever wanted to. "Good," she said simply. Sophia blinked. "That's the right decision," my mother said. "I know it doesn't feel like that yet. But you will know it later. Families that make you feel small are not families. They're obligations dressed in the wrong word." She topped up Sophia's wine. "My son has never brought a woman to Sunday lunch," she said, as though this were a conversational fact and not a thing she'd clearly been waiting to say. "In 43 years. I want you to know that I take that seriously. And I want you to know that whatever happens between you, you are welcome here. This table has room." Sophia's eyes went bright. She pressed her lips together. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank me, just come back," Rosa smiled. "And bring something from the bakery next time. Luca says I'd cry. I'd like to find out." At some point that same Sunday, when we were walking in my mother's garden after lunch, Sophia stopped and turned to face me. "James made me an offer," she said. My brother James, who ran the financial side of the Marino Group's legitimate operations, had spoken to her briefly after the meal. He'd shown her the numbers on a commercial kitchen space downtown, walked through what an outside investment could do for the expansion she'd been planning mentally for months. "What did you think of it?" I asked. "I think it's the right move for the business," she said. "I also think it feels like charity." "It's not charity," I said, "it's investment. James doesn't do charity, he does opportunity." She looked at the garden. My mother's orchids along the south wall, their greenhouse door open in the autumn sun. "Your sister said something to me today," Sophia said. "She said that refusing help isn't strength. that she did it for years with her foundation and all it did was delay the good she was trying to do. Lucia said that? Quietly. In the kitchen while you and Dante were arguing about the Merino Group's quarterly projections. He paused. Was she right? Sophia looked at me. She didn't answer the question about Lucia. I think, she said carefully, that there's a difference between accepting help from people who want something in return and accepting investment from people who believe in what you're building. Yes, I said, there is. I'm going to think about it, that's all I ask. She looked at the orchids, the ones that looked like they shouldn't survive and always did. I need something else first, she said. What? My own place. I waited. Not because I don't want to be here, she said, because I need to know what it feels like to come home to something that's entirely mine, to wake up in a morning that no one else owns any part of. Before I can choose to share that with someone, I need to know it exists. I understand. You're not going to try to talk me out of it? Why would I? Because you have a very large apartment and a spare room and it would be simpler. Simpler isn't the point, I said. Healthy is the point. And you're right. She looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen from her before. Not gratitude. Something less needy and more solid than gratitude. Okay, she said. Then that's what I'm doing next. She found the loft 6 days later. 4th floor above a bookstore on a quiet street in the Arts District, 2 blocks from the nearest decent cafe and 4 from the river. High ceilings and enormous south-facing windows that turned the whole space gold in the afternoon. Small. Entirely hers. She signed the lease with her own money and moved in with Maya's help on a Thursday. I helped carry boxes and then I left. She called me that evening from her kitchen, her first evening in her own space. I could hear in her voice something that had never been there in exactly that form before. Not happiness exactly, but ownership. The sound of someone who has finally planted their feet on ground that belongs to them. It smells like books, she said. That's the bookstore below. I love it. I know you do. She was quiet for a moment. Luca, yes, I think this is the right thing, building this first. I think so too. But I also think I miss the sound of your coffee machine. I'll buy you the same model, she laughed. That's not the same and you know it. No, I said, it's not. The gallery show opened on a cold November evening, 3 months after the wedding night. Sophia stood in the doorway of the Carmichael Gallery in a deep blue dress that she'd chosen and second-guessed and finally committed to, and watched people stream in. Strangers examining her work with genuine interest, critics taking notes, photographers capturing details she'd spent hundreds of hours creating. She'd built 5 installation pieces, each one exploring a different face of transformation. Breaking free, chains of spun sugar dissolving into cherry blossoms, so precisely crafted that the transition seemed to happen as you watched, the chains losing their hard edges at the moment they became flowers, becoming. A chrysalis cracking open along a perfect seam, the wings inside built from spun sugar so delicate they caught the gallery light and scattered it like stained glass. Chosen, 2 hands reaching toward each other, fingertips just touching, the entire piece constructed from crystallized honey that glowed warm gold under the spotlights. Something about the color made people stand in front of it longer than anything else. Rising, a phoenix built in red and orange sugarwork that seemed to flicker at certain angles, the flames so precisely graduated from dark red at the base to near white at the tips that the illusion of heat was almost physical. Home, the 5th piece, a small house constructed entirely of sugar. Every architectural detail present, roof tiles, window frames, the grain of the door, and inside, visible through the windows, a warm golden glow. The light source was real, a small, warm LED hidden within the structure, just enough to make the sugar walls translucent, just enough to make the interior look like somewhere you'd want to be. The card beside it read 2 words, "Build yours." Rebecca stood with me for a while, watching people move through the rooms. "I've never had a show like this," she said. "People are staying. Usually at an opening people see and move. Tonight they're standing still in front of things and not moving. That's because she made work that means something," I said. "Yes," Rebecca looked at me. "You knew she could do this when you brought me those photographs." I knew she'd been doing it for years in private. I just wanted to give her an audience. Rebecca looked at me for a moment. "You're not what I expected when Ethan Cross called me," she said. "Luca," I said. She smiled. "You know what I mean." Late in the evening, I watched Sophia go still. She was standing in front of home, the last piece, the one with the light inside. I saw her body change, a small tightening, a breath held. I looked toward the entrance and saw Carmela Caruso. She had come alone, without Eduardo, without Valentina, without the armor of the group. She looked smaller in the gallery than she had on the terrace of the Hargrove estate, in the way that people who are accustomed to commanding familiar spaces look smaller when placed in unfamiliar ones. I started across the room. Sophia's hand came out and caught my arm without her turning around. "No," she said quietly. "This one's mine." I stayed where I was. I watched her walk to her mother. I watched them talk. Carmela's face moving through something complicated. Recognition, grief, something that might have been the beginning of honesty. Sophia came back to me 10 minutes later. Her face was carefully composed, professional, the face she used when she was processing something she hadn't finished with yet. "She apologized," Sophia said she could see the work now, that she'd been wrong about what I was building. "How did it feel?" "Like standing somewhere a fire used to be," she said. "The ground is still warm, but the fire's out. There's nothing left to argue with." She looked at home. She said Valentina told her she should come, that the work was extraordinary and she'd regret it if she didn't see it. I thought about Valentina, about the phone call the morning after the wedding, about the cruelty and the calculation in that voice. "People surprise you," I said. "Sometimes." Sophia leaned against my shoulder. "I'm not going back to them. Not yet. Maybe someday when I've built enough of my own foundation that their opinion is just information instead of damage. Whatever you need." "You always say that." "I always mean it." She turned to face me. Around us, the gallery continued its conversations, critics and collectors and curious strangers moving through rooms built around her work. My mother and Lucia were near the chosen piece, my brother Dante examining Breaking Free with genuine attention. "Do you know what I keep thinking about?" Sophia said. "Tell me." 11 months ago, she said, I was sitting in your bakery reception area trying to figure out if you were a difficult client or a reasonable one. That was the whole scope of my concern, difficult or reasonable. And now?" She looked up at me. "Now you're standing in a gallery full of my work at my opening night, and I'm trying to find the right words to say something I've been thinking about for a long time." She looked at me. "I love you," she said. "Not the version where I'm confused about whether I love you or love that you saw me. I've had enough time to separate those two things. I love you, the actual person, the specific and inconvenient and occasionally impossible person who showed up at midnight without asking why, and defended me to my mother in front of her wedding guests, and documented my work like it was worth documenting before I knew it was." She held my gaze. "I choose you," she said, "not because I need somewhere safe to land, because I know what I'm choosing." In front of everyone, my mother made a sound from across the room that I'm choosing to describe as dignified approval. 4 of the 5 installation pieces sold that evening, for prices that made Sophia sit very still for several minutes when Rebecca told her the numbers. Rebecca also forwarded an inquiry from a gallery in New York that wanted to discuss a show in the spring. 2 weeks later, I drove to her loft on a Sunday morning with bagels and coffee. She opened the door, already awake, already working, a sketch in her hand of something I didn't recognize. "What's that?" I asked. "New piece for the New York show," she said. "Come in." I set the food on her small kitchen counter and turned to face her. "Can I ask you something?" "You're going to anyway. Are you ready?" She set down her sketch. "Ready for what?" "To choose this." She looked at me. "Not the version where you need somewhere to land. Not the version where you're grateful for what I did 6 months ago and you've confused gratitude with love. The version where you've built your own life, your own foundation, your own reasons for being in the world, and you choose to share it with me anyway." She crossed the kitchen and stood in front of me. "You came to get me at midnight from a wedding where no one noticed I was leaving," she said. "You took me to a gallery and showed me my own work in a room designed for art. You gave me space when I asked for it, time when I needed it, and you never once made me feel like I owed you anything for any of it." She put her hands on my face. "I'm ready," she said. "I've been ready. I was just waiting to be certain I was choosing you and not running to you." "Those aren't the same thing." "No, and I know the difference now." "Move in with me," I said. "Keep the loft. Use it as your studio, your sanctuary, wherever you go when you need to be only yours. But come home to me at night. Wake up in my kitchen in the morning. Build this life we've been building for 8 months, together, out loud." "Yes," she said. "Yes to all of it." 6 months later, spring in my mother's garden. Lunch that had started at noon and was still happening at 4, because that's what happens when a real family gets together. When there are people who want to be in the same room and have built enough shared history to fill an afternoon without trying. Sophia beside me, laughing at something Lucia had said, her hand in mine, traces of sugar on her wrist from the installation piece she'd been working on since 7 that morning. The Alchemist Studio, the commercial kitchen she'd built with James's investment, had been operating for 4 months, booked solid for 6 months out, teaching workshops every other Saturday that had a waiting list. Victoria Chen's referrals filling the premium end of the calendar. I watched her across the garden table. There is a version of this story where I tell you that I saved her, where I drive the car and defend the speech and arrange the gallery, and that's the shape of the narrative. The man who arrived and fixed the problem. That version is wrong. What actually happened is this. Sophia Caruso had been building her own life for years before I appeared in it. She'd been creating extraordinary work in a small shop on Maplewood Street, building a client base, perfecting a craft, becoming what she was going to become with or without my presence. What she needed wasn't saving. What she needed was to be seen by one person who had no incentive to lie about what they were seeing. One person who would look at what she made and say, without agenda or obligation, "This is art. This matters. You are extraordinary." Then she needed space and time to believe it herself. The rest, the confrontations, the decisions, the walking away and the building up, all of that was hers. I watched it happen. I drove the car and held the door and made the coffee and gave her the guest room and the gallery access and James's card. But the decisions were always hers. I think that's important to say clearly, because a lot of people tell versions of this story where someone arrives and rescues someone else. And that version is romantic in the way that simple things can be romantic. The real version is harder and better and more worth the effort. The real version is two people who decide, with full information about what the other person is and what life beside them will require, to choose each other anyway. Freely. Specifically. Without emergency. That's what we did. "Stand beside me near the garden wall." "She's the one," she said. "You told me that the first time you met her." "I know." She looked at the table where Sophia was drawing the beginning of something on a napkin while Lucia watched. "I say it again now because the first time I said it you needed to hear it. Now I say it because it's simply true and worth saying." She put her hand on my arm. "You know what your father would say," she said. "What?" "That you chose well, that you were patient, that you found someone worth being patient for." She looked at me. "Real love is rare," she said. "That's what I always told you when you were young. You thought it was sad, that it was a warning." "I know. It was never a warning." She squeezed my arm. "It was a description. It's rare the way orchids are rare, delicate and impossible and worth every bit of the care." Across the garden, Sophia had looked up from her napkin sketch. She found my eyes, smiled, the real kind, the one that starts behind the eyes and arrives at the mouth last. I smiled back. 3 syllables, a cracked voice on a phone at midnight. "Come get me." The answer, when you found the right person to ask it to, is simple. I'm already on my way. If this story reached you, hit the like button below and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Tell me in the comments, what's one moment in your life when someone showed up for you without being asked?